Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. It's been a while. Mea culpa. I'm very, very sorry. Life happened, and the apocalypse is still happening. But I'm back, and I have an amazing and wonderful guest. I shared it on social media already, so you might know who this is. A fellow German. I got another German on my stream, but we won't do it in German, sadly, which will be easier for us. But the lovely Michael Klarfeld. AKA Claradox. You'll explain because all the Tolkien nerds are very, very focused on how you pronounce stuff. So let us know. Is here on my channel, and we're going to talk about maps because this man is an expert on maps. So, Michael, introduce yourself. Who are you? Why are you here? And what are you doing?
Hey, Helen, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so first things first, Claradox, very easy to pronounce. It's a mixture of paradox and my last name, which is Klarfeld. So I just combined these two. So who am I? I am, well, a very normal English and art teacher living in Dresden, Germany.
Beautiful Dresden.
Yeah, in my free time, I draw maps, among a lot of other things. I'm an artist who draws a lot. I make movies, but mainly if I am well known, then because of the maps that I'm drawing. So that's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. And would you say, I mean, mainly you do fantasy maps, right? Those were the ones I saw in the past.
Yeah. So I started with a map of Westeros, which is from the A Song of Ice and Fire novels of George R. R. Martin. And well, this map, I just did it in my free time for fun. I uploaded it somewhere online, and people in the A Song of Ice and Fire community found me and went crazy about this map. And I was very surprised about that because I would not have expected the hype that went on because of that. And people started using it in their podcasts and video podcasts and so on. And I decided to do more of that. So here I am.
And many more you did.
Yeah,
yes.
I did. Yeah.
So see, I didn't know that those were actually your first maps. And when did that start? Like how many years ago would you say? At the height of the fandom, or?
Maybe 6 years ago. Well, it was. You could say it was the first map that I published online or broadcasted online or put up on the internet. Before that, I had been drawing realistic graffiti drawings of people and portraits. So I just I thought, well, I should make a map, and I did. So yeah, and then this map drawing, my first map, this Westeros map, took a long time. I drew for 40 days on that one thing, and immediately people asked me to do another one and other parts of the world of Ice and Fire. So I said, no, you can't pay me enough to do that.
Not again.
Yeah, it had taken so much time, but then I started doing it, and I fell in love, and I included things that I had done before anyways. I started including portraits of people, family trees of all these crazy people in Game of Thrones, mostly dysfunctional Viking families. And I started including people from the fandom. They sent me their pictures. And I drew them into those maps, so they became part of the overall ornamental imagery and all the family trees that I put in there. Yeah. So, yeah.
And that is super unique that you included the fandom. I mean, this is kind of, how you grew this business, let's call it a business. But it's so cool because I've never seen that before. You see many, on Reddit and all these platforms, you see people doing similar things, but they have mainly when they have these fantasy casts, they have actors or well-known people, but you included the people from the fandom, and I really love that idea. It's very unique. I haven't seen something like that before. So that was how I got introduced to your maps, seeing that everyone was sharing their portrait, and it was like, who is this guy? This is a really cool idea because, you know, like you, I love maps. I started with Tolkien maps, but yeah, I really thought that was so cool and unique. And it makes sense when you now say, you know, because you combined your love of taking portraits of people. Yeah. So do you draw that just digital, or do you draw? I always wanted to know how you do the portraits for the maps.
Yeah, for the maps, I do everything digital. I
Mm-hmm.
use a Wacom tablet and I draw in
Uh,
Photoshop.
yeah.
And basically, I take, well, it's actually simple once you know how it works. It's
Yeah.
I take a picture and I draw on top of that picture. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's cheating, but everyone cheated, even Da Vinci and Michelangelo. So they
I,
all cheated. They used the same techniques like
of
me,
course.
not Photoshop.
And you don't have the models, you know, in your house. I mean, some people wish, you know, but it's not like people from America who are mainly, I would say, for the Song of Ice and Fire community, they're mainly from America. It's not like you can have them at home and, you know, they model for you. So all
Yeah,
good.
but I include like everyone. My kids are involved in those maps. Like
No.
my dentist.
Your
You know,
dentist. Okay, who's your
I'll,
dentist? Tell us. Who's
no,
your dentist?
yeah, I won't tell you. Yeah,
Okay.
I also sometimes, you know, it's hard because especially when it comes to the Song of Ice and Fire maps, the characters
Yeah.
there are often described
Yeah.
pretty well.
Yeah.
And for some of these characters, they are not really nice descriptions, like
Yeah.
very fat people, or you know, people without a chin or without breasts,
Yeah.
women without breasts. So you don't go around asking for models for that, you know. Hey, who wants to be a flat-chested, chinless, you know, model for my? You don't
Yeah.
find these people. So of course, I
No.
also take pictures from actors
Yeah.
or um, celebrities too.
Yeah. Good. But you told me, because we're here to talk about your newfound love for Tolkien Middle-earth maps. And but you told me a lovely story, and I really liked it. That people have these little, you know, stories they really experienced and how they got to or how they fell in love with a certain topic. And you told me a cool story about a Tolkien kind of map you saw and how that
Mm.
kind of sparked your imagination. So tell
Yeah.
us this story because it's so cool.
Yeah, before I start, I was preparing myself for this conversation, of course, and
Yeah.
I found a Tolkien quote which I think totally
Mm.
applies to what we are doing right now.
Hmm.
Um, when I open up the Silmarillion, there is a letter from Tolkien to his editor in
Hmm.
the very
I
first pages,
Yeah.
and he wrote the following words. I printed them out to read them because they apply so well.
Yeah.
So, my dear Milton, he writes, you asked for a brief sketch of my stuff that is connected with my imaginary world. It is difficult to say anything without saying too much. The attempt to say a few words opens a floodgate of excitement. The egoist and artist at once desires to say how the stuff has grown, what it is like, and what he thinks he means or is trying to represent by it all. I shall inflict some of it on you, but I will restrain myself. So that's the so um, in other words, stop me from rambling once I get too excited about that stuff. So your question was basically how did I get into contact with Tolkien and with Tolkien's maps?
Yes.
And well, in general, I could say Tolkien has always been a part of my life without having read the books, actually. So
Mm.
it's a really weird story. So I grew up in East Germany, and until the wall came down, of course, we didn't have Western fantasy literature there.
Mhm.
So that was not a thing. And after the wall came down, the first real contact I had with Tolkien was a movie, the Ralph Bakshi cartoon
Oh, yeah.
from the 70s. And that was on TV, and my dad and I watched it.
Mhm.
And I don't remember much, but one thing that I remembered was how amazed my dad and I were at the depiction of Frodo and the
Mm-hmm.
feelings of these cartoon characters. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember this one scene with Gollum holding up the ring. And this has always been with me. So I somehow knew what the Lord of the Rings was because of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a year later or so, I saw a map of Tolkien's Middle-earth by Pauline Baynes.
Yeah.
That's an illustrator, and she had drawn this map in the 60s, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood in front of that map for I don't know how long. I just looked at the map,
Oh,
and I remembered the places like Mordor
yeah.
and the Shire and so on. These places were ringing a bell because of that movie. I remember
Mm-hmm.
the movie, and I from that moment on I wanted to read the book.
Mm-hmm.
But in well East Germany at that time, I have to admit you didn't get Tolkien books there,
Mm-hmm.
so there was no library that had them. Bookstores, well, probably didn't have them.
Yeah.
I was not intensively looking for them, of course, but
Yeah.
yeah, the only thing I ever got was an anthology with an excerpt of the Weathertop event when Frodo and the
Ah.
Wraiths
Mm-hmm.
are on the Weathertop, and
Mm-hmm.
that was the only thing I ever read
Mm-hmm.
from the Lord of the Rings. So I even gave a presentation on Tolkien in one of the German lessons without ever having read the books because I was so fascinated by that map and by that movie and by this one excerpt I had. And
Yeah.
nobody, I mean, nobody knew who Tolkien was. He
Yeah.
was unfamiliar territory back then.
Yeah.
So early 90s.
Plus the whole genre, and even at that time, there wasn't a lot of fantasy literature, not on that scale out there. And I think, well, it's very different, and like creating a map of an unknown world with weird made up names that sound very foreign is like, who,
Yeah.
yeah,
Who does that?
who
Yeah.
does that?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. So it wasn't until I was like 18, 19 that I actually read The
Hmm.
Lord of the Rings. But
Yeah.
the
Still.
story or the journey of Frodo from the Shire to Mordor was
Yeah.
something that I somehow recalled taking place, and I knew exactly where this journey
Yeah.
took him and where everything took place because I
Yeah.
remembered where Mordor is and where
Yeah.
the Shire is from that map.
Yeah.
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 So it all started with the map.
It all stuff for most of us. Yes, it's cool. So you read The Lord of the Rings before did you read The Hobbit?
I did read The Hobbit
Hmm.
after I read The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Yay. I mean, I don't do much Hobbit content on here, and I actually don't do that much Lord of the Ring content on here. I do mostly Silmarillion, which is, and we're going to talk about that because the world looked very different in the first and the second age. And you've now experienced this doing these amazing maps.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I mainly do actually Silmarillion content, which is, the years of the trees and the years of the sun, then later first and second age. But yeah, so you started with the third age map.
Mhm.
And I will definitely share this here. I will share all the links and everything down below and on social media because you can go to Michael's. Obviously, you can just look at the maps. If you don't have the money to spend or if you don't want to have it on your wall, I love art, and I have a lot of art in my house and I have a lot of maps in my house. And I told Michael because I bought one of the maps because I want to print it out for my office in a big size because I've never found a map I really liked and that was really, really detailed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's something that where I might step in.
Mhm.
This is one of the things that I realize myself. You have a lot of maps, and
Mhm.
there are a lot of Tolkien maps out there, and either
Lord.
either they are very beautiful and
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing
Yes.
without having the information on them,
Yeah.
or they are informative, full of all these places,
Yeah.
but then they don't look that good. So, and I try to combine both aspects, being informative and aesthetically pleasing. So,
Yes, and you even have, the geographical aspects in there, which is kind of important, especially because this is exactly what you did. I love to do for videos or for just my imagination. I like to follow routes people have taken, and I want to know, okay, so this, because there are a lot of, in the first and the second age, there are a lot of battles happening. This is my thing. I love battles. And you need for, all these tactics he's describing, because Tolkien was a soldier, right? And he is actually really in the Silmarillion, he actually in the standalone books like The Fall of Gondolin, for example, he really describes the battles in detail. And you want to know, you won't understand things if he talks about the Westgate Fall, or they went to and you need to understand, okay, where was that? You need to have some idea, especially geographical idea, because some of the forces Medros forces were in the north, and you just want to have an idea of what happened, because it's not your world. It's not like somebody tells me they came from Hamburg and went to Munich. I would get that, but this is not my,
most Germans wouldn't probably.
Okay, well, but you know what I mean. And you don't get that in this world, because it's a fantasy map, and a fantasy world. But yeah, I really like that. And were you surprised when you found out? Because I think you didn't, like, you read the Lord of the Ring books, and obviously you had an idea, I guess, that there was a time before these books, because they were talking about other times and other characters. But did you really know that the world changed? Because you then made the Valerian map, which, is a different world to the Third Age map. Did you know that?
Yeah, I mean, when I read The Lord of the Rings, of course I didn't. And I looked up Tolkien maps maybe while reading, but also, yeah, later. You find these Middle-earth maps, and suddenly there are other Tolkien maps popping up, like Valerian, that I was like, what the heck is that? And you see there are some names that are similar, like the Blue Mountains, the Eredluin, and
Yeah.
well, there has to be some kind of destroyed continent somewhere. And yeah, then I came across the Silmarillion, and it started to make sense.
Yeah.
In a way. But yeah, I mean, I drew a Middle-earth map knowing that I would continue with the Valerian map as a next step. So these two maps that I did followed closely.
And where you like, is that something, because it is very close and similar to our world, what happened to our world? Because I don't know if you know, but Tolkien wrote all this because he wanted to create he thought, well, my people, English, don't have a sufficient or not satisfying for me kind of history. They obviously had, but he wanted to create a mythology. And yes, there was the Arthurian legend, and there was stuff, but you could obviously see he was very into North mythology. He was very much into Germanic mythology. And I'm rereading the Iliad and all the Greek mythology, because that's how I grew up. My dad is a complete history nerd, and this is how I grew up, with him quizzing me about the Iliad. I mean, like a 10-year-old child. I'm not kidding. Yeah, and so I'm rereading everything, and I'm discovering a lot what Tolkien not copied. He didn't copy, but he was influenced by everything from our past. And he wanted to create a kind of mythology for England, and not of England. He didn't say this was real, but it could be real, because this is why he put so much time and energy and effort into it. He created languages. He created these maps, He could have just written a really good fantasy book, but he wanted more, He kind of tells us that this could be our past. This could be the earth before, before the Roman Empire, before the Greek, whenever. And I find that fascinating. And I think you discovered this because it's happened in our past, that when you go to Rome, you literally find when you see all the sites, they're like, oh, we just discovered how Rome looked in 1000 BC. Like, this is so cool because it's like our own past, and this is what happened, with Valerian, with Numenor sinking, with all these things. And is that something that also fascinates you, how he combines?
It is fascinating in the sense that this is a feast that probably no other modern author has done.
Yeah.
When it comes to the scope of it.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever fantasy literature is out there, and whatever modern fantasy literature author may write, they are dwarfs compared to Tolkien. They just stand on his shoulders.
Yeah.
The approach is unique. Creating a mythology is, of course, a totally different approach than, let's say, A Song of Ice and Fire. This is
Yeah.
a fantasy story,
Yeah.
but it's not a mythology. And
no, he
yeah,
wanted a message. He wanted to
yeah,
send a message. I think Martin is more for sending a message, like war is bad, like, war destroys, and those topics. Tolkien wasn't about finger pointing that much. He wanted, I think it's a different
and
approach.
it is when you like read the start of the Silmarillion, like where Tolkien describes how the world is created, and the music of the
I know.
Ainur and of these angelic beings, the Valar, and so on. There is a certain truth to that, or some psychological truth that we share as human beings, and that is comparable to all kinds of world mythology. And creating that as an author, I mean, that is over the top. Even if you don't necessarily like the language or the overall stories, but the feast, or the feat that he did there, I mean, that is amazing. You have to acknowledge that, and Tolkien is unsurpassed in that, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so too. And and I think it makes it in a way easier. Not that easy, because that, all the pronunciations. And you asked me, and I'm a really bad friend because I didn't have time to check it up. But you said, can you have a third look on all the names, because it's like not a normal name. It's not Hamburg. No, obviously, you have hyphenated everything.
Yeah.
So you basically made a made up language map, so it takes double the time, I guess.
Yeah, I'm a language aficionado, so I'm an English teacher, and when it comes to hyphenation, I think Tolkien did that because of the English, and I think it's easier for people with a like that speak languages with a Germanic background.
Yes.
It's easier to pronounce for us Germans than for English. But, so hyphenation is not a problem, because it's just stressing the point for the English to, hey, you have to actually pronounce the vowel, so don't drop it.
Don't try, exactly, don't. And try to roll the R. Good luck.
Good luck,
yeah. No. So when you did the second age map, are you somebody like me? So when I look at a map, and I love looking at maps, and this is why I travel so much, and this is, I'm kind of poor. So when you look at a map, are you fascinated and want to read? So you draw Tolmorven, for example, and a little island in the second age, and you're like, what is that? Do you look up events? Is that something that interests you, or
when I'm drawing the maps, I probably look up every little place that I have to write, because it has to do with the labeling that I do. I want to know, is this a city, or is it a village, or a ruin, or what is that? And so I basically look up what I'm actually drawing, and this way I find out a lot of things that I don't know by just looking up the names online. think, oh, this is an elven city and this is some dwarvish ruin, or
Yeah.
I don't know, some orcish camp, or I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and yeah, this is how I find out.
Yeah.
When it comes to traveling, or the wish to see certain places that I'm drawing, I've been to Iceland 3 years ago, and
Mm.
it was during the summer, and everyone there told us that this is the shittiest summer since weather recording started on Iceland in 1917.
Doesn't
So
sound very
every
promising.
no, it wasn't. So there was a lot of fog. It was very, very cold during the summer, and you didn't have many clear days. But when we arrived, it was raining, and we were driving through this Icelandic landscape, volcanic landscape with moss-covered stones. And I would turn to my son and I said, "Hey, we just arrived in Mordor," and it looked exactly like the
Yeah.
Mordor scenes we see in the Lord of the Rings movies. And
Yeah.
so I've been to Mordor already. I can say that.
Yeah,
Um,
just without the maybe the hellfires, or it could be autumno as well.
Yeah,
This is
I mean, sometimes on Iceland you have these hellfires as well.
true.
So, yeah, but
Eyjafjallajökull, whatever that
yeah,
volcano's name was, I got
yeah,
stuck in Rome for a week because nobody could fly years ago, if you remember, because the
yeah, because
Icelandic volcano.
nobody can pronounce that
No,
volcano.
Eyjafjallajökull, whatever.
Yeah, Eyjafjallajökull, that was the name, but I practiced probably for 2 weeks to say that.
Okay, good,
Yeah, and
good.
we wanted to see that volcano. We couldn't. There was too much fog, so we stood in front of it, but we didn't see it. So
Okay,
Mount
so
Doom
it's
was covered.
Mount Doom. Yeah, Sauron was doing something,
Yeah,
something is brewing.
taking
So
a
prepare.
shower or something. Ah, yeah.
Very steamy shower.
Yeah.
And is there, let's talk maybe second age, because you recently did the Valerian map. Is there a city or a place or whatever that fascinated you and you're like, oh, cool, this is like the story behind it, or maybe just the name, and we're going to talk about names a bit later, but is there anything while you drew you were like, woo?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is basically the places that made it to the third age. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm always fascinated in uh, what still remains after some catastrophe takes
Yes.
place. So you don't have much there. You have, well, what today is, or in the third age is Middle Earth's west coast,
Mm-hmm.
was in the east of Valerian, so the mountains, and also the island that you have on the west coast of Middle Earth that once was a forest, if I recall correctly, like the area.
Area door, but
Yeah, yeah, okay, whatever. So
mhm,
I was, yeah, that is one of the things I'm. If I want to know more about that, it is something when you see ruins or remnants of civilizations that have gone,
yeah,
I that are still present. That is something
mm-hmm,
fascinating.
mm-hmm,
Um,
yeah, and that
Also, sorry,
mhm,
sorry.
no,
Also, um, well, I I think in images, and I
mm-hmm,
always have these Lord of the Rings film images
mm-hmm,
in my head. And one of the things that I found extremely fascinating in the movie is the scene where Boromir is killed, and you have these large stone sculptures half buried in the ground,
ah,
and so you see something was there before which
mm-hmm,
does not exist anymore, but we still
mm-hmm,
can see traces of it.
mm-hmm,
So this is yeah, and when we talk about Valerian, you have a whole continent that is just
mm-hmm,
gone.
yes,
So this is fascinating, but there is no specific place I'd say
yeah,
that I would
yeah,
like to see or
yeah,
know more about. One of the one of the things I would be interested is elven architecture. So how do they
Oh,
do that?
yes.
Like,
Thingol's halls. Oh my God!
yeah, yeah,
Imagine going to Doriath. That's a place I really want to see. Although Thranduil basically copied it, and I really do think. I mean, you can say what you want about The Hobbit, but I really do think they did an amazing job in creating and recreating, especially Thranduil's halls, the Woodland Realm. I think that was so beautiful, and it is said in the books that because his father and him, they came from Doriath, right? And then they had, after the fall of Doriath, they left and founded the Woodland Realm, and he made it in the image, obviously not completely, but in the image. So I imagine that so beautiful, and yeah.
yeah. And I think that, well, when you look at how you turn something like Tolkien's stories into a film, of course you need artists to
Mm-hmm.
recreate that and
Mm-hmm.
to invent or reinvent
Yeah.
or interpret something that is only existing in written form into an image. And I
Yeah.
think they did a great job using
Yes.
Alan Lee and all these artists that were already Tolkien
Mm-hmm.
enthusiasts before the movies. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that must be amazing for an artist to just come up with an
Yes.
idea and then seeing people actually building things that you drew and that you think Tolkien had intended to look
Yeah.
like you drew it. I mean, that must be amazing,
Yeah. Even
right?
the little, if you watch, on the DVDs, very often they have, on the extended versions, they have the scenes, how, how the costumes were made and all that, and how the masks were made, and the
Yeah,
orc costumes, and how long mask took. And it is so, every little detail and the love that goes into it, that is so amazing. And I love that for The Hobbit, they kept all that, so you can still visit it, because I think after the Lord of the Ring movies, like Hobbiton and all that was gone, it was just a set. And I think now they kept it, and you can still, well, one day, knock on wood, I want to go to New Zealand, and yeah,
visit
my
Bilbo's home.
yes, and I'm tiny, so I'm a total Hobbit size, so I would fit, in back end my next place. Yeah, no, but what, what you said, I find that so fascinating. The loss of home, and I think that is always a big topic. Losing your home, or being afraid of losing your home, and then fighting for that. And that is, what these maps show us, because that there are a lot of places that are now abandoned or no longer there, but he still describes it. And yeah, it makes it so, I think that makes it so real, because he gives every little piece and every little stone, he gives a history. And in the annals and in the appendices and everywhere, you can there's literally no place on your map you won't find an information and a story about, in any additional material that man created. And that is so cool, I find, because I remember looking at the maps, and I found, like, the haven, or the old city of Londdair. I'm mispronouncing it, but I was like, oh cool, well, what is that, and what
Yeah,
happened there? And it's so, and it's I love this, because he thought literally about everything. I don't know if that man ever slept. Is he
yeah,
a vampire? How could he do this? But yeah, I find that fascinating, and I love this Atlantic myth, and I do think of a civilization and a whole, all the knowledge and everything always got lost in all the during all these times. These places are drowned, especially Numenor. And we'll get to Numenor now, because I have an agenda, and I want you to make a Numenor map.
yeah. I guess that shouldn't take too long, because
No.
in comparison to Middle Earth or Valerian, it's relatively small and
Yes.
easy to. recreate, I guess. Yeah.
But for you, as a little hint, there will be a book, and I do think it will come out in summer. There'll be a new published Tolkien book with some notes and some information about Numenor as well. So I do think that would be they will maybe give us more towns in Numenor, more how did Numenor, flora and fauna, how did it exactly look? Because yes, there are a lot of descriptions in the book, but you have to go really deep because it's there's so many additional stories where, like one of the stories of Aldarion and Erendis is the mariner's wife part. And there they describe, a big part of Numenor is literally just sheep and meadows. And you never read about that before. So it changes the whole idea of how Numenor looked.
Yeah, it's like Ireland, right?
It is kind of like Ireland, yeah. Mixture of Atlantis and Ireland. So the Greek island.
So I maybe you can answer that question that I have said. Did Tolkien, if he placed something on a map that he drew himself, did he write about every place, or is there something about every place you find on every map? Because that's probably a difference to some other fantasy authors who just put up names there knowing they would never write about them, and just
No, there's literally, and I'm not kidding, there is a story, and this is because I was looking up a lot of these places, and you can find, the thing is, I mean we're lucky today because we literally can type it into Google and then where you can find it, and then I read it from the actual book because I have all these books here. But he had like additional, like the history History of Middle-earth, right? That's a 12-volume book series. And not many people know that. They know, the 3 Lord of the Ring books, the Hobbit, and the Silmarillion. I think those are the standard go-to books. But there's a 12-volume edition of books. Then he has, I can recommend that to you if you haven't, don't have that. It's one book, and it's Tolkien's letters. And it's so cool. And he gives a look because, like us, there were many people having questions, and they wrote to him, and he answered and gave it, because he wrote the books, and then he had time to think about it, and he wanted to change things, and he went back and changed things, but he couldn't do that to a published book. But these are his real thoughts, and for me that is canon. And a lot of fans asked questions about whatever, and he answered that in the letter. So you have additional information to the 12 books in the letters, and that is so fascinating. So I would bet money there isn't a place there's not a story about, and that is pretty awesome.
I mean, he probably loved details.
Yes.
I've been to Oxford a few years ago at a Tolkien exhibition.
Yeah, you told me. Yes.
Among other things, they exhibited crossword puzzles that were filled in by Tolkien.
Oh God!
And one of the things, when you look at that, you see that the guy used different colors for his crossword puzzles, and every second letter is written in red, and every even letter is with a red pencil, and every odd letter with a green pencil. So he took a lot of time not just filling in these crossword puzzles, but changing his pen after every letter. So that's the kind of
dedication,
detail dedication we're talking about when we look at Tolkien.
Yeah. This is why he didn't finish a lot of the books. He had time to finish them. He had time to finish the Silmarillion, but he went back, and then he got lost. And I get that. I'm that kind of person. Then you get lost, and you're in a rabbit hole, and you write you're in a very good. Yeah, in a hobbit. Yeah, for my size, in a hobbit hole. Helen is in a hobbit hole. Yeah, and this is what happened to him. And yeah, not all of us have millions of people reading your book, so he couldn't go back and change that in the books. They were published. It was done. But he changed his opinion about things, and you could, like, for example, how the orcs were created. Because I don't know if you know that, but the thing in the end is, they're all kind of God's children. And if they really come from elves, from tortured elves, that would in the end mean elves are killing elves. And it's not their fault that they got tortured by Morgoth and changed, and he felt a bit weird about cheering, everybody cheering, yay, we slayed 1,000 orcs. So he wanted to change the concept, but it was too late. All these books were already published. So he thought he just didn't write a story. He wanted it to be complete and perfect, and
Yeah, and even if he had lived 1,000,000 years, probably he would not have gotten there, because you still find something you want to change and you want to do better. So that's,
and his son was very, he had all the notes, but he was very careful. He didn't finish the book, so it's a complete novel. He gave us the little fragments his father had, and I find that sad in a way, because I'd rather have a complete story than just fragments of a story, and then I have to make it, because he was so close to his father like nobody else, and I would be fine for him finishing the books. And that happened to the three great tales. So there are 3 books, Beren and Luthien, Children of Hurin, which you would love, because you love A Song of Ice and Fire. Do you love the books as well, right?
The books, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you would love Children of Hurin. It is literally the predecessor of Martin. It's a Greek family tragedy. It's brother and sister making love, and it's a lot. Okay. You wouldn't think Tolkien wrote that. It's debauchery. It's good.
Yeah, I insist we read that. Sorry.
Good with the word plays tonight, Michael. It's a really good story. It's very different from everything else he wrote. It's a story of a downfall of a human house, one of the greatest houses of men, and it's tragic, no happy end, but it's good. It's really, really good, and that's the one book that is like a novel that is completely written, and not just fragments. And the other 2 books are fragments. And the Silmarillion is okay written. It's just hard to read. You feel like you're reading the Bible.
Sometimes, yeah, I guess. Yeah, especially the creation stories.
Yeah. And all the names and all the places, and you're like, do I have to remember everything? Is that of purpose? No, you don't.
But in this way, this is how he is different from other fantasy authors, and this is what you talked about first. It is a mythology and not a fantasy novel.
No.
The sense that we think of today.
Yes.
And would be interesting if anyone ever attempted to make or turn that into a movie. Probably you couldn't do that at all.
The Silmarillion?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people want it. I want dragons. Hello. So First Age, yes, bring the dragons. But, we'll have House of the Dragon, so I'm okay. Yeah, fair enough. One really good friend of mine, we went to school together, did the Game of Thrones dragons. He worked for Pixar for a really, really long time. And he's the graphic person behind the dragons from season 1 to 5, I think. So I'm into dragons.
The true mother of dragons, then. Not just...
I'm the true, sit on my shoulder, Dracarys. Good. But like, for example, the Witcher books, I think he never created maps himself. So all the maps from the Witcher, I think you will know better, but I think just fans did that, right?
Yeah, I created a Witcher world map as well from the Northern Kingdoms.
Yeah.
And I had to basically look up everything. There is, the first maps were fan creations or in some, I think, Czech publications. Some Czech publisher made a map accompanying the books. And then the video games came out and they had maps. But he himself, I don't think he ever created a map himself.
No.
Yeah, that's actually an exception for a fantasy author, at least not commissioning anyone.
No. I was wondering because it would fit perfectly because he describes all these areas and it's important to understand where the kingdoms lie. Because I read the books years ago. I have a good friend, she's Polish, and she said, read these books, you will love them. And I read them and it was hard. At that time, I couldn't find any map and it was hard because at the ones I have, there are no. I think the new ones you can get probably have maps inside would make sense. But the publication I have didn't have any maps, and there was nothing on the internet. It was years ago, and I couldn't. It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, you see how maps add not only to the storyboard, but when it comes to fantasy, add a vital piece of information to the story that makes you enjoy the story even more.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, I guess they are part of the whole genre, I guess. And something's missing, I'd say.
Yeah. You always need, I think the ingredients are, a foreign language or foreign languages. So it makes it, stand apart from our normal life. That alone, creates distance. And I think Tolkien, I don't know, how did you find that? Because you're very into, languages. You're obviously teaching a foreign language. I find when you read all these names and hear the names of the people, it makes sense. It fits. Those names fit to whatever he describes, and that is so magical. And I've never had that before.
Yeah, because
in fantasy.
With Tolkien especially, it's consistency. He named hills like Amon Sul and Amon something, and it's always the word Amon. Or for every mountain chain, he had this word, and it's consistent within the world. So that's what makes it, probably so special.
But even for the I know, but even for the regions, you can imagine like this is a Northman, this is a Hillman, this is somebody from the south. It makes sense by how these things are named. And I think for Martin, but he didn't do it himself mostly. I think he had language experts helping him, as far as I remember. What George R. R. Martin did, but it also makes it like the names of the houses and the places and the people. You can, Martell, that sounds southern. You get it. Oh, this is somebody from the Iron Islands. I get it. It makes sense.
The only criticism that I would ever have is the very generic names of the continents themselves, like Westeros, and Essos, and Sotorius. I mean, there's only Notorious missing, so they, but I mean, that's very simplistic, but the rest is pretty well thought of, and especially when you look at maps of George R. R. Martin's world, the difference to Tolkien is that he created places or invented places that we will never see in the books, and they are just mentioned and they are there. And he even made references to other authors like Ambrose Bierce. He included a place called Krakosa, which is from an Ambrose Bierce poem, and like all of these references to other authors, and that makes these places also very interesting. You want to know more about them, but we know that you will never see them in any A Song of Ice and Fire novel, and so you can just make up your own stuff about it.
Well, like Arthur Dayne, like there are a lot of Tolkien references in his names, which, he loved Tolkien, so all good. He didn't steal it, he just paid homage. I see it as that, to be fair. And in the end, everybody's copying from everybody. This is just what history
all the time.
You can't invent everything, and we need something. It's fun to discover these little gems, and then you feel like I'm so knowledgeable. And are there but so you enjoyed doing the map, so you didn't
I wouldn't do or spend the time I'm spending on that stuff if I didn't enjoy it. So I come home from work. Oh, I have this 1.5 hour left. Let's just switch on Photoshop.
Oh my God, you're really a nerd. And is there a region or a city you would like? I think you teased it a little bit, that Silmarillion maybe, that you would like to have, because I don't know. Do you know a bit about the show, about the Amazon show, the upcoming show,
I
or
have to admit, no, I don't.
Mhm.
I'm really not knowledgeable about that at
Yeah.
all.
Let me phrase it up in two sentences, which is hard for me because I talk a lot. But but yeah, so it will be about the second age. The thing is, Amazon is so tight-lipped about it, so we don't know a lot. You can guess a bit. Judged by the cast, because some things are kind of confirmed that we will have Galadriel, and we know approximately the timeline. The second age is 3,342 or something years long, so a long time span, and a lot happened. But it was mainly the age of Numenor, so it will definitely be Numenor. But I do think it will also be the Forging of the Rings, because it would make sense. That is the main event, and Sauron giving the rings to the Ringwraiths and him corrupting these former good kings and nobles of men. This is basically
Yeah,
the prologue of Galadriel in the movie, which we
I
will
guess.
see.
And it makes sense from a marketing point of view,
Yeah.
because you somehow have to have something in there that people can reference to,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
the rings, of course, that
Yes.
we have heard of. So yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
And so we will definitely see something like Eregion, pretty sure. And you will see people like Celebrimbor, who helped him basically, who's the head of the Gwaith Imirdine, the guild of the smith in that region, which is so cool. And yeah, you obviously have Galadriel, Celeborn, her husband. Yes, Sauron. I still want to make this trend on Twitter. I want to see hot Sauron, because he wasn't tanned then. He still had a fair form. So Sauron, and you will see the person Sauron, because he was charming, he was beautiful, he convinced these very knowledgeable elves that he wanted to do good. He made them forge these rings, right? So this is such a cool and interesting time. So we will definitely see these places. Is there a place, when you made the Valerian map? Is there a place, or the third age map? Because all the second age and third age approximately the same, except Numenor drowned, and Kalinardon became Rohan, and a few things changed, but not the whole world, like before. Is there a place you want to see in a potential show, because you're like, oh, visually this would be so amazing?
Not so much visually, but yeah, I think it's the island of Numenor. That's
Yes.
it is a name that well has been around for such a long time, and
Yeah.
it's something we want to see, don't we? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, we've seen Middle Earth and know how what New Zealand looks like,
Yeah.
but I want to see, like, what do they make of Numenor visually? Maybe is it
Yeah.
like Ireland? Is it like
Yeah.
northern Scotland? What will it look like? What will it be?
Hmm.
Or be more based on some Spanish planes or whatever? I have no
Hmm.
idea. We'll
Hmm.
see.
Yeah. So you're excited about that. I think it's
I guess.
very they have, although it's a small island, I don't know, probably better, do you have an idea, when you draw the maps, like, is how this is compared to England or America, or size wise? Is there any information?
um, this is the good thing about fantasy maps. There's a
You do.
lot of artistic freedom. I mean,
Okay,
and
good.
and I have to admit, I really don't care much about these things when I'm drawing them.
Yeah,
Once they are finished, I sometimes include these measurements, like this is, I don't
because I
know.
saw that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and uh, but most of it, I have to admit, is totally made up,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I just go with the visually appealing.
Hmm.
And also, if I put places there, we know where they are, but
Hmm.
sometimes oh, this label is in the way of that place, so let's move this place
Yeah.
up a few centimeters on the map, and nobody cares because it's fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's a good thing about it. I would burn in hell if I was a real geographical engineer or something, had to draw real
No,
world maps. Yeah.
no, and if he doesn't give you anything, because he obviously doesn't say in his text or in the book, it had the size of Texas. He does. He obviously doesn't say that, so we don't know. But I think you can get an idea that obviously an island isn't raised from the sea. It can't be as big as a whole continent. Like it's different. It should be tinier in my imagination than Australia. It's something like, obviously not the shape because it had the shape of a star, but something like New Zealand, or I don't know, but not too big. But yeah, I'm also excited to see Numenor. There's a really good YouTuber out there, Fellowship of Fans, and he does a lot of speculations of the show and from set photos and where could this be. And it's really, if you're interested in that, to prep for the show, because the show will come next year, so it's not that far away.
Yeah, I'm excited about that, and about
Same.
House of the Dragon, and we see so many cool fantasy shows coming up, and
Yes.
like we live in glorious times when it comes to that. Like, imagine
Yeah.
people living before the Lord of the Rings movies. Whoa, what a sad life.
Yeah. Well, they
With,
had the Bakshi,
yeah, which, and this Russian film that just was,
Oh my
yeah,
God, with the Tom Bombadil. Oh my, a
yeah,
friend of mine showed me that and I was horrified. I was
yeah,
scared.
yeah. That's kind of weird. There's one thing that when well, we talked about our conversation before, and one of the topics that um, I find extremely interesting when you think of Tolkien and his maps and of fantasy
Hmm.
maps in general is that they are in a way so anachronistic. So
Hmm.
um, we have these maps that create a kind of realism, but
Yeah.
on the other hand, all these stories, like Tolkien stories, play in a kind of, let's name it, medievalish
Yeah.
kind of fantasy world.
Yeah.
And if you compare that to real world medieval times, you would never find
No.
such maps that we have. Like,
No.
when you look at Tolkien and any fantasy map,
Hmm.
and I find that extremely fascinating that these maps would not be used in the world
Yeah.
itself. So the
Yeah.
hobbits would not know how far Mordor is from the Shire. They would have no idea.
Yeah.
Just knowing it's somewhere very far away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is, if you think about it, this is one of the arguments how Sauron didn't know about the Shire, because if you've drawn the maps, the Shire wasn't there in the first age, and not even, I think, in the second age. It wasn't the Shire. The hobbits migrated, and Sauron, as you say, they didn't have a map. They didn't have anything to reference it, and so Sauron didn't know where to find. This is why he sent out the Black Riders to even find the Shire, because he didn't know.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. It makes sense what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there is an in-world map in the Hobbit. So the
Hmm.
dwarves have a map of
Yeah.
the mountain
Erebor.
where Erebor,
Hmm.
and this map looks totally different
Yeah.
than the Middle Earth map because it is an in-world map, and it's a
Yes.
map that you would actually find like that in medieval times without
Uh-huh.
the Tengwa letters, of course, but
Uh-huh.
still.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean that's very fascinating that Tolkien um, created a map for a modern
Yeah.
readership, um, depicting a world that would not have
Yeah.
world maps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For us to understand the world better. Yeah.
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 And I mean, I'm a map geek, so obviously I love looking at maps and at older maps. And if we take medieval world maps, they look totally different because
Yeah.
theology was always prevalent over actual geography. So they didn't show geographical distance, but
Yeah.
theological concepts like Jerusalem being in the center of the world,
Yes.
the map being oriented, meaning the east is at the top and not north. So all these.
I study German literature, and I love one of my favorite German myth and mythology is das Nibelungenlied. The Ring of the Nibelung. I don't know how you 100% translate it, but this is part of our heritage. So also something that probably didn't happen, but you know that you have Siegfried in there, which is kind of resembles Sigurd, like the North hero, and Alberich, and you know all these people who also show up partly in the Northern mythology. But it's so fascinating because now I forgot what I wanted to say. Because who wrote it, they still don't know till today who wrote it, but you can clearly identify who gave the order to write it, because it had places in there that really existed and that were true places. But you have it was probably either bishop or wealthy family that wanted to create this myth and to maybe it was the House of Bern or whoever it was, right? So also the distances, some towns are not mentioned, some things got mixed in, but they also wanted to create a mythology. And this is exactly what you say. It wasn't a 100% map that they kind of created. It's not about a map, but a world or the depiction of Germany. There wasn't a Germany at that time, but they made their own story. It's like the winner writes the story. They gave, they had the money. They gave whoever the author was the money, and so he created this story and this mythology, and that is so fascinating.
It's an age-old concept. Like you create, or people created mythologies basically for either for the reason of really finding some spiritual truth somewhere, or expressing some spiritual truth that they experienced, or some psychological development that was going on, and give expression to that, or in order to defend some political claim or some dogma or something. So of course you find it in every mythology. You have these these descriptions of who is the enemy, and which place is mentioned, and which place is especially favored by God or the gods. And there's a lot of human motive behind all of these mythologies. Sometimes serious spiritual searching, sometimes probably political agendas, and not so nice agendas too.
And you know what? So last topic on that, because I'm rereading Homer, and he actually, because he was Greek, so he should have been on the side of the Greeks, right? So, but he wasn't. He wasn't just with the Spartans. The way he describes the Trojans and Hector, for example, Hector is the hero of the story, basically. It's not Achilles. I mean, yes, Odysseus is in a way as well, but he is the Greek, so he's a Greek author writing this for the Greek, but he's still pro-Trojan as well. He's really, he's not one-sided, and this makes this story actually so great, because you can choose who you want to side with. I love that. I'm rereading it, and that is very rare, because as we said, normally an author has an agenda and he wants to tell you something. He wants to give a message. But here, no.
And it shows you what a great guy Homer must have been, by empathizing with the enemy and actually seeing the human aspect in the enemy, and not just dehumanizing an enemy. But
no, Hector was the most fleshed out character, and even Helen. I got my name from her because my dad is like like a Greek mythology freak.
What an odyssey your childhood.
It was. Oh my God, Michael! Like, not kidding. So no, I can be very happy. My name is not Cassiopeia or something like that, because he really wanted to do that, and my mom was vetoing it. So yes, or Andromeda. So it was Helen. But yeah, even her, so you know, she wasn't portrayed as a whore or anything, and even like in the end, you know, she kind of felt sad, and she was like, actually, I kind of made a mistake, and they have redemption arcs and all that. So it's really really cool how he portrays that. I'm not reading it in verse, so that is too hard to read the songs because no, they're very good. I'm reading a good German translation.
But you know, Helen, you talking about that stuff makes me want to read all of it at once.
Do it, do it.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm doing a Tolkien Greek mythology video at the moment, and there's so many good stuff in there. Like yeah, not spoilering, but it's a good of stories. Also, Medusa was she was misunderstood all her life. Like the girl didn't do anything wrong. It was Athena.
Yeah, probably people who saw her were just stoned.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
And couldn't
that
tell
was
the
a
story.
very bad pun.
It's okay, Michael. It's late. It's a good dad joke.
Yeah.
Good. So to round this up, Michael, what is next for you except the Numenor map you will do?
The Numenor map that I now have to do. Well,
yes.
The next projects, well, when it comes to maps, I am always and continuously drawing Westeros regions.
Yes.
You probably know that Westeros has 7 kingdoms, so I'm drawing regional maps of those, and I make one of those regional maps per year. So it takes me a very long time.
Wow.
It's also a different style, artistic style
Yeah.
from the Middle-earth maps. So this takes way more time.
Mm-hmm.
So the next on my list is the Westerlands. So the area where the Lannisters live and Tyrion Lannister comes from.
I'm on the map.
Helen will be on the map as well in the family tree. She is married to a Lannister.
Mm-hmm.
And
I couldn't be a Lannister because look at my hair.
But you have nice blonde Lannister children because the Lannister seed is strong.
Yes.
And yeah, that's one of the things. Other map projects, I think one of the things I do is I also draw Dungeons and Dragons maps.
Cool.
Role-playing games. And apart from that, I always have a lot of art projects like
I know.
And yeah, I still
and movies.
Movies too, yeah. I still continue doing graffiti drawings and realistic portraits of people.
Yeah.
But movies too, yeah. During times of Corona,
Yeah,
of course,
you could,
I don't.
yeah.
But yeah, I do. Yeah, I've made some music videos and movies as well, short films.
A very talented man. So go check out definitely. His website is down below, and also the drawings. There's a lot on your website. So basically, all the information of your work, what you've done so far. And do you have anything last to add to the lovely people watching this, interested in this, or about Tolkien, or anything that comes to your mind? Put you on the spotlight.
Anything that comes to my mind.
No pressure.
If you love Tolkien or any fantasy literature and are part of the fandom, or any fandom, be a nice person. Just be nice to other fans and accept people who don't know as much as you do. Be open-minded. Don't be feisty. It's fantasy literature, and let's have fun. So that's one of the messages.
Yeah, I love that.
The second one is pay your artists. Okay, so that's what I want to say.
No, I get that. And I'm partly guilty, of using a lot of pictures in my videos, and I know that. And I don't quote every artist on the picture, but I tell you one thing. It is when you edit the videos, it's not like I want to steal an artist's work or anything, but sometimes you Google, I don't know, Gondor or whatever, and I don't want to use the movie images because you always get like copyright strikes and everything. And I rather have these visuals, and you must have come across thousands of beautiful pictures of Middle-earth, of people, of places. It's amazing what this community is capable of. And this was actually one of the reasons I wanted to have you as an artist on my channel, to make people aware, yes, there are, people who draw portraits of Arwen, but there are people really doing these maps as well. And then you Google something, you find something, you love the image, you try to find out who is the artist behind this, because they are not all watermarked. I try to find watermarked pictures where you see, where the artist has his name on the picture, but the thing is, you don't find it always. And then sometimes, but I still want to know it is. But I still want to use a picture. So I'm obviously guilty. Maybe I could look longer, but it takes like hours to edit these videos. And, I have it's not an excuse, but I have a real life job and everything. So if one video would take me 3 months then to do the research and to find that. So it's not always that creators who use these things want to steal or not want to credit the artist, but sometimes
and I think, you have to see the spirit behind it. I mean, when it comes to guys like you and all the content creators, you are such wonderful people, and you are the least persons to be called out about that, because I've been approached by a lot of content creators for other maps and stuff that I do, and they always were the super nicest, super friendliest, generous. I mean, I could just sing your praises now, Helen. Those people are.
They are.
I want to give them my stuff for free, and they.
You wanted to give me yours for free, and I was like, no, I want to pay.
I'm talking about Googling something and then finding my stuff on some Chinese website, and that sucks,
Yeah.
So it's when you pay an artist, you don't pay for the product, you pay for the hours that the artist spends doing that stuff. So.
No, I get that. But the thing is, about a lot of content creators in A Song of Ice and Fire, and especially Lord of the Ring, they advertise a lot of the artwork, like especially on social media. You have thousands of, and you've come across probably a few of them, especially on Instagram, which is a very visual medium, perfect for pictures, and Pinterest. And a lot of the content creators literally advertise, like most of their posts are, check out Jenny Dolphin's new picture of Arwen or whatever. So it's give and take, I think, for most of the creators.
Sure. And it's generally like you want your stuff to be shared as it's great if people share that stuff. It's when you have these high resolution images that you want to sell online, and then suddenly you find the same thing somewhere else. That's great.
I get that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't want to go into that, and I just didn't want to call you out on anything.
No. I feel not because you said it. I very often feel kind of guilty about that, because yes, I could put in more time and effort to do the research and to find every artist behind every picture, and I don't do it. So mea culpa. But it's.
I mean, if they're cool, they will just write you if they have a problem with that.
Yeah, and I'm happy, to quote them or to take it down if somebody is totally not fine with it. So all good. We're in the end all artists, and like you said, I like what you said before, because the thing is, and especially I think this is in Tolkien's, what Tolkien would have wanted us to do with his work is to appreciate it, but not to be, finger pointing or judgy. He never wanted that. He was Christian, and a lot of his messages are Christian messages. But he was never in your face. He was very subtle with these topics. And he didn't want to convert anyone reading The Lord of the Rings to be to become Catholic. He wanted people to rethink stuff or to value friendship and stuff like that. So, and I really liked your message, because this is so important today. And I see, oh my God, my cats are fighting. Sorry. Not fitting to this topic. Stop it.
It is, because I think what you just said, this is, well, maybe good to end with the Silmarillion. This is exactly what is, or the truth behind that is exactly described in this creation story, where you have one discordant theme, musical theme brought in by Melkor, and then somehow you can still do something with it if you don't repeat it, but put in a soft, silent counter theme which is positive and which takes over all that negativity that is in there. I don't know if that makes any sense now.
No, yeah, it does.
If
No,
it
it
doesn't
does.
reread the beginning of the Silmarillion and the music of the Ainur, I mean, this is one of the best parts of the Silmarillion for me personally. It's like how this music description of taking over negative musical influences, as it is described there, by silent, positive counter themes that take over.
And do you know what I always thought? Why it's called A Song of Ice and Fire? I always thought because these are the two things, you know, like the discord and the harmony. And I always thought of, and it's a song, you know, they sing, they physically sing, and it's music. And I always thought this was maybe Martin's idea of a song. Obviously, you know, history was not written and was mainly transported in song in the old time, so that could also be whatever. I always had, you know, it's kind of the music of the I know what he created. No, yeah, but a very good ending, and yes, that is the message, and that's the message on my channel. I don't, you know, I you can think what you want. Reading is art, right? Literature is art. I always say, you know, my mother is an art professor, and you can stand in front of this picture. You see something completely else than I. Are you right? Am I right? Nobody, you know, everybody has the right to have their own opinion, and you don't need to read everything an author wrote to have an opinion. You can, you know, like, it's fine. It's the dialogue is the fun part, like what we did. You know, you haven't read these bloody books 20 times, but you still love them. Like you said, you even talked about them without reading them. I find that is still the best thing ever. Yeah. So thank you for coming on, Michael. I'll definitely, if you ever want to come back and I don't know, reread the story or talk about this, I think you would be a good person when the series is out, because you're also a very visual person, like me. You know, I work in marketing.
Maybe talking about the films and the filmmaking. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah. You're always invited back if you want to.
It was a pleasure for me being here. Thank you so much, Ellen.
Thank you. And my lovelies, so for me, the video about the Teleri and the Noldor, I've written it, I've edited it, I just need to upload it, so that will follow hopefully whenever you see this in the next week. So more videos coming and more guests coming. I have a cool lineup of guests, and there will be content again. My break is over. Thank you very much, my lovelies. Bye bye.